NFL roster cutdown day is Tuesday, August 26th, and there are a lot of good players on this Dolphins 90-man roster that are currently on the 53-man roster bubble. Now, it is a good problem to have that we're going to have to see tough decisions made by Chris Grier and Mike McDaniell, but I wanted to take a look at the two positions that have the most competitive battles going on and give my thoughts on the matter heading into the final preseason game. And when roster cutdown day happens next Tuesday, don't miss a thing because we will have roster updates, whether it's signings, whether it's releases, waiver claims on my social media. At Nic_Rohloff is the handle. Want to be the most up-to-date Dolphins fan there is? Well, go follow me right now. All right, so without a question of doubt, the two toughest positions to project and to analyze on Miami, wide receiver and edge rusher. I mean, I don't think you could debate that it's the most deep and competitive spots on this offseason, preseason roster right now. And we're going to start with wide receiver because wide receiver is pretty brutal, man. Like, I feel horrible for whatever player ultimately doesn't make this 53-man roster because a lot of them deserve it. And we have, 11 guys right now on this roster. We had 12, but Tyreek Black got waived earlier in the week. You have your top four. You have good depth. Like, we have no clue who is going to make the Dolphins 53-man roster whatsoever. And when I think of who the roster locks are for the Dolphins roster at terms of wide receiver, I think we've talked about this a lot, and it's pretty common knowledge that we're going to have four guys make the roster without hesitation. Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, Malik Washington, and the free agent signing Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. That's without a doubt. Those four are going to be on the 53-man roster, which then puts, I think, these five as the quote-unquote bubble guys at the wide receiver position. D. Eskridge, Taj Washington, Theo Weiss Jr., Eric Ezukama, and Andrew Armstrong. Now, I think these five guys are fighting for two spots. Miami in the past has kept five wide receivers. I think they keep six this year. I just don't know how they could justify not keeping six with how many wide receivers they have. So you got those five dudes fighting for two spots. And if I'll be honest, there's kind of a sneaky solution here, which could make it easy for Miami when you start to see the wide receiver room potentially shape form. Maybe the Dolphins trade one of them, like trade a Taj Washington, trade a Theo Weiss Jr. to get a corner, to get a 7th or 6th round pick. And why would they do that, you ask? Well, if you're going to cut one of them, why not try to get something in return, whether it's a player at a position of need like corner or a draft pick for the future? Because these players have played so well that some team might want to make sure they can get them instead of having to wait till potentially the waiver claim process following the cut down day on Tuesday, August 26th. So I think there's a world where the Dolphins trade a wide receiver. And I'll ask you this. Take your guess. Will the Dolphins make a trade at wide receiver? I think they could. Type T if you think they trade one of them. Type D, that is, if you think they do not. And when we talk about the roster bubble at wide receiver a little bit more, D. Eskridge, I am moving kind of forward into the roster lock. So even though I had 4 true locks and then 5 guys in the bubble, I am really close to just saying D. Eskridge is in that group of 5 that is locked. And then you have those other 4 guys fighting for the final spot. So when we really look at the true wide receiver battle, I think the final wide receiver spot on the 53-man is between UDFA wide receiver out of Missouri, Theo Weiss Jr., and the 2nd round, 7th round pick, Taj Washington. That's just how I see it shaping out. So let's compare the two wide receivers and what they've done in the preseason. Well, I think it's first off a good thing to start at who they are as players. Both of them are 24. Washington was coming out of college a bit earlier than Weiss did, but they're a much different styled wide receiver. Washington's a little bit smaller, a little bit more explosive. He's 5'10", 174. Meanwhile, Theo Weiss Jr., longer, more of a possession, physical guy over the middle of the field. He's 6'2", 210. So two different styled wide receivers, which honestly might benefit Theo Weiss Jr. in a very slight way, considering Miami already has a small wide receiver in Malik Washington. Tyreek Hill is pretty small, and D. Eskridge, if we have him above Washington on the roster, is also on the smaller side. And when we compare them in the preseason, here are how the two players fared in the first two preseason games for Miami. Washington certainly had the better game in week 1 against Chicago, having 3 catches on 4 targets for 53 yards, including that really beautiful corner route from Zach Wilson when he was pressured, absolutely torched his man in one-on-one. Theo Weiss Jr. really struggled in that game, and maybe it's partly because Quinn Ewers couldn't accurately throw a football to save his life in that ball game, because Weiss Jr. was open on a 8-yard out route, and Quinn Ewers just missed him on an easy throw. But in week 2 against Detroit, you certainly have to give the edge to Theo Weiss Jr. He had 6 catches on 9 targets, 80 yards, including 2 touchdowns in that second half, both coming from Quinn Ewers, displayed his solid connection with the rookie quarterback. Taj Washington did not play as much, only played in 25 snaps compared to Theo Weiss Jr.'s 31 snaps, but was playing with the second unit. Zach Wilson, D. Eskridge. Weiss Jr. was with the third unit. So I'll be honest, I don't envy the decision makers for the Dolphins, because Theo Weiss Jr. showed me a lot in that preseason game against Detroit. But he's also been really good with Quinn Ewers throughout camp. But then you have to ask yourself, is Theo Weiss Jr. only performing well because he has a good rapport with Quinn Ewers? Or is he performing well because he's just simply that good? Taj Washington has been performing with Tua in practices. He's been performing with Wilson, Quinn Ewers. So there is a conversation to be had about whether Taj or Weiss Jr. would be smarter to be kept. And I even tried to split the two slightly by if they were, at least one of them, more productive in terms of run blocking. Because run blocking is key for Miami wide receivers, and it's something that McDaniell asked them to do at a very large rate. Well, there's no ground given between the two. In the preseason 2 weeks, Taj Washington's been graded as a 58.7 run blocker, Theo Weiss Jr. at 56.6. So there's really no separating these two whatsoever. And the reason why this just becomes even more difficult is because the Dolphins roster construction, you can maybe say, hey, maybe they should keep 7 wide receivers. It'd be a lot, but it's been done in the past. You can't do it. With the need at corner, the need at safety, the need at pass rusher, you can't keep 7 wide receivers. So whatever wide receiver you keep, if you are deciding between Theo Weiss Jr. and Taj Washington, the other one is going to be claimed, which is why I think a trade could be on the horizon. You can't keep both of them, and you probably aren't going to be able to sneak one of them on the practice squad because they've been both that good in practice and training in the preseason, so you wouldn't be able to get them on the P squad. Moving over to the edge department here in a second, but shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show, the daily fantasy sports platform I play every single day, and I'm glad they're back here at the channel with football and college football back. Week 0 in college football starting up this weekend. And I'm excited to get in on the action, especially when we talk about professional football, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers. I won my first preseason action last weekend between Miami and Detroit. I'll be back again this week for Miami and Jacksonville. It's so simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. You can play daily. You can play season long. I've got a 4-player entry here to win 10 times my money potentially. More than Jason Sanders' 50-yard field goals made, more than Jaylen Waddle receiving yards, more than Amari and Hampton rushing touchdowns, and less than Jin Daniels rushing yards. That is my 4-player season-long entry. Join me and the millions of others on Prize Picks right now by downloading the app, and when you use code CLNS, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. let's segue from the wide receiver roster bubble to the edge roster bubble, because these are the two positions that I find the most difficult to evaluate and project for Miami. And it became even more difficult for me and other content creators when they signed Matthew Judon earlier this week to a deal worth up to $6 million this season. He is going to be your fourth edge rusher behind Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, and Jalen Phillips. Now, they list Jalen Phillips and Quentin Bell as outside linebackers and not defensive ends or edges, but they all essentially play the same position. So it's going to be difficult to really project who makes this Dolphins 53-man roster at this spot. And when I'm thinking of who is an absolute lock on the Dolphins 53-man roster at outside linebacker / edge, however you want to play it, there are four guys that are clearly making the roster. It is the big three of Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, and Jalen Phillips. But then you also have to add the newly signed Matthew Judon, because Miami is not going to sign the veteran up to a $6 million contract, who has been a four-time Pro Bowler and has been very productive, to a deal if they don't plan on keeping him through the 53-man roster. So this now puts the roster bubble at edge with these five guys: Grayson Murphy, Mohamed Kamara, Quinn Bell, Derek McClendon, and Cameron Good. So the question, very much like wide receiver, is how many guys do you keep on the 53-man roster initially? Last year, the Dolphins kept 5. The year prior, they kept 4. So you don't really have a clear-cut answer on what Miami will do. I think you have these 5 guys fighting for one, at best, 2 spots. But if I'm projecting the Dolphins 53-man roster due to them needing and probably more offensive linemen, more defensive linemen interior, and more corners, I think the Dolphins probably only keep 5 edges. So then you have those 5 players we just showed on screen all fighting for one spot. How does that shake out? We'll give you my projection here in a second, but be in the know, be the first to know about any Dolphins roster move this offseason and during the regular season by subscribing and turning on notifications. You don't want to miss any content we put out. We put out 2 videos a day, go live once a week, as well as for every Dolphins game. Subscribe and join the channel now. Out of those 5 players on the roster bubble, I think the player I would be most inclined to keep is the second-year UDFA out of UCLA, Grayson Murphy. He has been an absolute menace in the preseason as well as OTAs and minicamp. When you look at the preseason stats for edge rushers, he ranks in the top 10 out of everyone. Out of every edge rusher who has played at least 30 snaps, that's the threshold here, 30 snaps in the preseason, there are 71 edge rushers. Murphy ranks 4th in pass rush grade, 3rd in pressures, 3rd in sacks, 4th in pass rush win rate, and 2nd in QB hits. He has been dominant. He has played a ton. He's played probably, if you look at the snaps, almost at the top of the list of snaps amongst all of the qualified edge rushers. But the point remains, he has been phenomenal so far in the preseason. He's had the most opportunities out of all of the edges on this Dolphins roster, but he has also done the most with those opportunities. The most opportunities given have been to Murphy and Derek McClendon. McClendon's been fine too. He's been solid, but not as good as Grayson Murphy. And I'm having a hard time finding a pathway to where this second-year UDFA is not on the 53-man roster. So I'll ask you, make the call. Will Grayson Murphy make the roster for Miami? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Get down in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. This is how I think the edge bubble hierarchy will ultimately play out. And with those 5 guys that I mentioned a little bit earlier, I have them power ranked 1 through 5. I have Grayson Murphy on the 53-man. I have Quinn Bell currently on the bubble. If the Dolphins keep 6 edges, Bell will be the one kept. I could see him keeping 6 because of injury history to Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. But that's also why you signed Judon, to keep them fresh, rotate them more. I think they'll try to get Mohamed Kamara and Derek McClendon on the practice squad, and then Cameron Good's probably just going to be flat out cut, released, and not signed on the practice squad because you get 17 players on the P squad and not going to keep like a ton of edges. You'll want some wide receivers, offensive linemen, running backs, wide receivers potentially. So we'll see. Truth is, it's a big final week, folks. We got final joint practice on Thursday. We have the final preseason game on Saturday, and then a roster cutdown day on Tuesday, August 26th. We'll be here for it all, so subscribe, join the channel, and stay locked in because we will have daily coverage, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video as well as a live show coming up for the final preseason game. Subscribe and join us. See you then. Go Fins.